Good morning. On behalf of the Rescuing Our Communities livecast, vlog, whichever you like to call it, I am Clayton here with episode 63 of The Lies That Destroy Communities. And today's episode, for those of you who may would like to know and don't read the details, concerns I would say, life is kind of messed up, people, unfortunately. And as minorities in urban communities today, we have a great confusion between the definition of what a true hero, martyr, or advocate really is. Now, many times that's not our fault. It's the fault of the community leaders, such as ministers, minority politicians, all of whom I feel for the most part have sold us out collectively and allowed us to be used for our political clout, for our votes, for our dollars, etc. Now, these things should not be acceptable, as we're all supposed to be championed. I knew it. I have no clue why my software is doing this, but I'm going to have to take some time today and fix this. Anyway, so I'm not going to waste too much time. I'm going to get right to the point. So, for the last, I would say, about year, I've been advocating for minority rights, black male victim rights, and that's kind of shifted over from singularly black males to minority males as a whole, because the problem encompasses more than black men. It encompasses minorities as a whole sector. Um, Things are going on within the political landscape, people that we need to pay attention to. We're constantly manipulated by politicians. We're constantly lied to. We're constantly used. And I believe that these politicians and community leaders, like pastors, assemblymen, city council men and women, what they do collectively is they prey on us. They prey on the spiritual, I would say, hunger of minorities as overall. And they use our pastors, they use our politicians to manipulate us to gain political clout for themselves. A couple of days ago, I was on Staten Island. I'm from Staten Island. And I just happened to be riding around because I had some business to take care of. And I came across an area on Staten Island known as not Tappan Park, excuse me, Victory and Bay. Now, Victory and Bay is a notorious drug infested area. The police have done a pretty good job regulating it as of late, but it's always been known for heroin traffic and just disgusting traffic. We have to be honest. And as this day when I was on Staten Island, it's a little early, people forgive me. It happened to be the celebration of Eric Garner Day. Now, for those of you who don't remember, back on, I believe it was July 17th of 2014, unfortunately, Eric Garner was killed by the police in I would say, in a situation that didn't need to happen. Unfortunately, from the way the story goes, Mr. Garner was breaking up a fight, and detectives and the cops, being who they jumped out trying to regulate the situation. For whatever reason, these cops began to single Mr. Garner out. Well, not for whatever reason. For the truth of the reason is that Mr. Garner was a frequent, I would say, member of the area, as he was there, and most people who hang around that area are not there for legal purposes. We'll just be honest. But unfortunately, regardless of the reason he was there, he was unfortunately approached. The situation escalated. He was asked to comply. He refused to comply for, I guess, his own reasons to wanting to stand up to the police. And he was unfortunately, I would say, restrained with an illegal chokehold, which took his life. So I watched this event on Staten Island as they celebrated the life of Eric Garner. And I thought to myself, with all the things that have happened to minorities since Eric Garner's death in 2014, we would think that this day would have been expanded to more than just an Eric Garner Day. Because I feel that, truthfully speaking, there shouldn't have been a singular Eric Garner Day. In order for someone to have a day of remembrance, in order for someone to be granted certain privileges of their martyrdom, their life has to so speak for their accomplishments and the things they've done. So before I go any further, what I want to do is I want to give us some definitions and examples before I get into my main talk, because it can't be too long today, but this point does have a purpose. And the purpose is hopefully to enlighten people to the truth of what certain aspects of life are, particularly what a hero, an advocate, and a martyr really is. So we're going to start with the definition of a hero. The definition of a hero is a person who is admired or idolized for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities. And to list some of those people today, we're going to go to the 44th president of the United States, Barack Obama, the first black president. Truly a hero, truly someone who is admired and respected within the community by both white and blacks. This man made amazing accomplishments, and Barack Obama will go down in history for his accomplishments. He is a true hero. The next person we're going to go to is Mahatma Gandhi. Everyone knows who Gandhi is. Gandhi had become the ultimate symbol of peace throughout the 20th century. His fast against the colonial oppression of India, his work with the people of India, monumental guy. Definitely one who deserves the title of a hero. The person who we'll go to after that is Mother Teresa. Everyone knows who Mother Teresa is. Mother Teresa was a symbol of poverty and struggle and just the true, I would say, charitable need to do better for others than she did for herself. Next, I even like to list my late mother. And I list my late mother being from Staten Island because my mother was a hero. My mother worked tirelessly to aid and assist everyone who she came in contact with. She was not a woman who was about money. She didn't really care about recognition. The only thing she truly cared about was serving God's will and accomplishing her purpose, which she did until her untimely death at the age of 57 several years ago. The next thing we're going to go to is an advocate. An advocate is a person who represents the interest of a person or a group. Now, let's go through some advocates. This is Ruth Bader Ginsburg, former assistant U.S. Supreme Court Justice. She advocated for women's rights. She advocated for racial equality. She was, I believe, the second woman appointed to the Supreme Court. She lived a life of advocacy that will always be remembered. The next person we're going to go to is Nelson Mandela. Everyone knows the story of Nelson Mandela. 20 years in prison for speaking up of the rights of the people in South Africa. Um, Ultimately, he came out. He advocated for racial equality in South Africa and for Black Americans throughout the entire world. And Nelson Mandela truly does fit the definition of an advocate. The next person we will go to after this is Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells was the founder of the NAACP. Excellent woman. Formerly a journalist, her courage allowed her to be the first person to report nationwide on what was happening with the lynchings of Black Americans throughout the country. After Ida B. Wells, we go to Harriet Tubman. I don't think I need to say much about Harriet Tubman. Everyone knows who Harriet Tubman is as one of the key, I would say, advocates or institutors of the Underground Railroad. Harriet Tubman. They actually made a movie about Harriet Tubman that I don't think did her justice. But again, Harriet Tubman was an advocate. I point my mother out again because my mother was an advocate, advocating for the rights of just about anyone who came across the doorstep. And I remember being younger, I really hated it because I didn't have a lot of time with her. But in her death and becoming wiser and more mature, I understand her purpose and her advocacy, and it has given me an even more profound respect for her. The last we're going to go to is a martyr. And a martyr is someone who refuses persecution and death for advocating, who suffers, persecution and death for advocating, renouncing or refusing to renounce or advocate a religious belief or other cause as demanded by an external party. Now, for advocates, we're going to go to St. Peter. St. Peter was, I believe, burned or stoned to death for advocating the principles of Christianity after the death of Christ. The next, we're going to go to the man himself, Dr. Martin Luther King, the slain civil rights leader who fought for peaceful advocacy of the rights of Black Americans, who was unfortunately gunned down. They say it was James Earl Ray. I don't believe it was James Earl Ray, but Dr. King is definitely a martyr for his people. The next one is a little controversial, but I, as a Black man who is quite the supporter of Malcolm, believe Malcolm was a martyr. Malcolm was definitely a martyr for the rights of Black people. Malcolm's speech may have been strong, his rhetoric may have been somewhat sensational, but no one can deny the impact that Malcolm X has had on Black civil rights and Black advocacy. Next, we're going to go to Huey P. Newton. one of the founders of the Black Panthers. And Huey P. Newton was definitely a martyr because Huey P. Newton was killed for his ability to unite black folk into one single unit. And we cannot deny the advocacy of Huey P. Newton. The next people is Jesus. Jesus was a martyr. And if you've noticed, I picked the black Jesus because history has lied to us and tried to make us think that Jesus was not black. But the truth is, Jesus was black. So, people, we have examples of heroes, martyrs, and advocates. Now, the question today I'm going to pose is, should the victims of police injustice have a national, federally protected day? I certainly believe that they should. What in the heck is this? There we go. I'm sorry, I'm trying to use this sliding process that's a little annoying today, but it's not working for me the way I want it. When I was on Staten Island a few days ago, I was really bothered by Eric Garner Day because I noticed how the members of this community all sat there. You know, you have the politicians, and a lot of people who watch these broadcasts, if you're not from Staten Island, you may not know who the people I'm about to mention are, but I just happened to notice how these people supported this day. You know, you had Gwendolyn Carr. Gwendolyn Carr is the mother of Eric Garner, an alleged advocate for black male justice and the rights of minority men. But I don't really think Gwendolyn Carr is an advocate. I believe Gwendolyn Carr is more of a showman. I believe Gwendolyn Carr was unfairly given the position of an advocate because the unfortunate death of her son placed her in position that people who wanted to manipulate his death granted her this stage and this platform. I do not feel she deserves it. And the reason I feel that she doesn't deserve it is because I don't feel her purpose is true. I don't feel she's truthful. I don't feel she is a woman who truly is about what she preaches. Now, some might say, why is this guy speaking badly of this old woman? I'm not actually speaking badly of her. I'm just telling the truth. And I tell my truth from a position of a man who has had an interaction with her. You see, I myself am a man who has been unjustly persecuted by the police and law enforcement. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, I'm not dead. I'm quite alive, quite vocal, quite strong enough to assert what was done wrong to me. And one of the people who did something wrong to me was Gwendolyn Carr. Gwendolyn Carr actually lied on me to the police and had me falsely arrested for stealing her car several years ago. Now, I never stole Gwendolyn Carr. I loved Gwendolyn Carr. I had known Gwendolyn Carr for probably 15 to 20 years. My late mother knew Gwendolyn Carr. She was quite the close friend of my family. Me and Gwendolyn Carr got into a business transaction where Gwendolyn Carr agreed to sell me the car of her late husband, Benjamin Carr, for about $2,000, which I agreed. So I met up with Gwendolyn Carr and I gave her, I believe it was $500 down, and she gives me the keys and everything I need to this vehicle. Fast forward maybe 2 or 3 months later, some tolls had been acquired on Gwendolyn Carr's Easy Pass account, which she was trying to get me to pay. Now, the truth is, in writing, that I can prove, is I had no problem paying these tolls. The only thing I was asking Miss Carr to do was give me proof of these tolls because I knew that the Easy Pass bill was connected to her actual account. So just for simplicity purposes and for honesty, I wanted to make sure that the bill she was trying to say I owed her was actually all mine. And Miss Carr had a problem with that. Miss Carr didn't want to show me the bill. So I spent maybe a month and a half, 2 months trying to ask Miss Carr for proof of this bill, which she never provided me. But she did keep collecting my money. Every time she collected my money. So probably I would say about the second week of February when me and Gwen got up to the $2,000 that was agreed on. After my late mother brought Gwendolyn Carr this last $500 payment, I didn't hear from Miss Carr at all, actually. The first time I heard from Miss Carr after she received this payment was probably, I believe, February 28th of 2020, when I walked outside of my old mother's home and I saw a police car behind the van that she had tried to sell me. So me being curious, I walked up to the van. You know, I hadn't done anything illegal. I had paid for the car. I hadn't received the registration yet because I hadn't been in town. But the point is I had paid for the car. There was no need for me to duck or be any suspicious of the police being behind the car. So, you know, I innocently walked up to the car to find out what was going on. And these officers told me that there was what was called a BOLO alert on the car. And I said, what's a BOLO alert? I didn't even understand what that was at the time. But the officer, doing his job, told me that the car had been reported stolen. And I was completely shocked. Why would the car be reported stolen? I know this woman. I even told the officer. I said, I know her. I know the owner. She sold me the car. I showed the cop text messages from her. I said, hold on, let me call her. So I start calling Gwendolyn Carr, who does not answer the phone. Maybe after the third or fourth call, she sends me a text and tells me she's going to call me right back. And I'm like, all right, cool. I'm sitting there, talking to the officers. We're fine. Police being police, what they did was they set up me and another gentleman who was there. The actual officer was behind the car, was a sergeant. So what he did was call two other uniform officers to the scene, and then he left. Now, once he left, these two officers arrest me and this gentleman. We're completely dumbfounded. We don't know what's going on because, again, I had paid Gwendolyn Carr for this car. I had proof. I literally had messages in my phone where this woman was accepting my money. I get to the station and I find out that probably 2 months ago, Gwendolyn Carr had reported this car stolen. People, I was completely shocked. What? What are you talking about? I just paid this woman. I'm trying to explain this to the police, but as we know, with minorities in law enforcement, the cops don't care. If you're black in America, you are guilty until you prove your innocence. So these cops arrested us, despite the fact that I have definitive proof that I had paid Gwendolyn Carr and she had willingly accepted and communicated with me the fact that this car was mine. Whatever. I fought this case for about 2 years while Gwendolyn Carr, this noble woman, this advocate of social justice, lied through her teeth to the police. The reason Gwendolyn Carr did this, I later found out, is because of an Easy Pass bill for $1,800. So for $1,800, Gwendolyn Carr, a woman whose son was murdered by the police for injustice, subjected another woman's son to injustice for an $1,800 bill that was not even his. To this day, Gwendolyn Carr lies about it. To this day, the injustice and the racial inequality and bias of Staten Island refuses to acknowledge what Gwendolyn Carr did. No. What they choose to do is ignore men like myself who fight for the rights of innocent minority males. And because I happen to be living, breathing, and these local politicians and local pastors cannot manipulate my death into something to gain them political clout or votes or whatever it is that they choose to do, they decided that, my voice wasn't important enough. But people, I don't think they counted on the fact of who my late mother was. Again, I've showed many people in the slideshow that just passed who my mother was. She was an incredible advocate within her community. And as her son, many of the things that she imparted on her community, she imparted in myself, and they happen to be manifesting themselves right now. So, being a child of the Black church, I would like to reference a scripture, which is 1 John chapter 4, verse 20. And it says, if a man say that he loves God and he hateth his brother, then he is a liar. For he that loveth not his brother, whom he hath seen, how can he love God, who he's never seen? People, I am the brother of many of these advocates of Staten Island. I'm a black individual, a minority individual, just like them. As of late, I've been at war with the pastor of a church, Pastor Victor Allen Brown. Victor Allen Brown is the single reason that I was recently falsely arrested, maliciously prosecuted, horribly defamed and slandered by one Francina Evans, who I have multiple orders of protection against. You see, people, Pastor Victor Allen Brown has always been a nefarious liar and a pathetic man. He's never truly been a man of God. He's always been a man of himself. And myself, growing up as a child in the Black church, my late mother was a great minister on Staten Island who knew Victor Allen Brown. She was best friends with his late wife. And once Pastor Brown had violated the sacred oath of marriage, violated the prestigious, I would say, institution of his church by defaming and cheating on his ex-wife, he fell from grace. So Victor Allen Brown used my mother and her impeccable, I would say, integrity, her impeccable reputation, and he pretended to be her friend so he could reinstitute himself in the lives of the community of the people of my community to believe that he was a truly religious and righteous man. Now, as I've said, my mother passed away several years ago, and in her death, Pastor Victor Allen Brown has decided to attack me. He decided to empower my bitter ex-girlfriend, who was quite angry I broke up with her, and she wanted revenge. Sometimes, people, it's unfortunate, but the worst enemy that African Americans have today, and this is the sad truth, is ourselves. African Americans, you might not like this, but we are our own worst enemy because the truth is we have no unity. We have no sense of true purpose, people. And the people who are supposed to be able to inspire that unity in us, they're only about themselves. And Pastor Victor Allen Brown is no different. There are black men who are wronged within the community of Staten Island weekly. There are black men who are falsely arrested. There are black men who are maliciously prosecuted. There are black men who have their civil rights and their constitutional rights violated by corrupt law enforcement detectives and uniform officers. But the people of Staten Island tend to do nothing about this because if you don't have, I would say, the clout or the money to push the agenda, which is what's really going on in the community, you are ignored. My last broadcast, I believe I did, was about Victor Abraham, a young black man from Park Hill who was horribly set up for false robberies. And these robberies were actually directed to the federal government because they were trying to put this guy in federal prison for robberies he never committed. Now, this kid has been advocating for some help from the community for years, and he is completely ignored. He's ignored by the local assemblyman, Charles Fall. He's ignored by the city councilwoman, Camilla Hanks. People, he's ignored by everyone. No clergy, no councilwoman, no black advocate of the community will stand with this guy. Now, this young man had no criminal record. He had dreams of going to the Air Force, yet he can't receive any advocacy. I'm sorry to say it, Eric Garner and him are night and day. I personally knew Eric Garner. I knew Eric Garner. I respected him. We called him Lottie in the street. Eric Garner's only sole purpose was to sell illegal cigarettes in front of a check cashing place on Victory and Bay in Staten Island, New York. He had no ambition to be anything. And I don't say this to speak against him. I say this because it's the truth. The truth of the situation, Staten Island, is that you have martyred a man who does not deserve that martyrdom. You've named streets after him. You've given him days. When the truth of the matter is that instead of martyring and centering on Eric Garner, the truth of the community is you should be centering on all of the black people, all of the young black men and women whose rights have been violated and whose lives have been taken by the police. As I said early in the broadcast, Eric Garner died on July 17th, I believe it was, 2014. People, that was 10 years ago. What has happened in the last 10 years in the face of corrupt law enforcement and the violation of civil rights? What has happened? How many other innocent minorities have been murdered by police who were far better people than Eric Garner? Not diminishing Eric Garner's life in any capacity. He was a man, he had children, he had a family. And for the most part, I will say that Eric Garner had a good heart. But was he a good man? See, people, there's a difference between having a good heart and being a good man. A good man is a man who takes care of his family. A good man is a man who stands on something, who believes in something, who fights for what he believes. A good-hearted person is just someone who has the capacity to be good, exhibits that goodness from time to time, but he may not be a good man. And I don't believe Eric Garner was a good man. I believe he had a good heart. I know he had a good heart because I knew him. But I cannot sit back and say he's a good man who deserves streets named after him, who deserves the complete focus of a community when we have dozens of other innocent minorities that have been murdered. And today I'm going to take some time and I'm going to highlight how many other innocent minorities have died since the death of Eric Garner. Here we have, Elijah McClain. And I would like to read a little bit about Elijah McClain because I want everybody here to understand the life and what happened to the people I'm about to name. Let's go to Elijah McClain. This may be a lot for you people, but I'm trying to say this because the point of this is, people, that there needs to be more awareness to what's truly going on. Elijah McClain. Elijah McClain is 23, and this happened on August 24th, 2019, about 5 years ago, in Aurora, Colorado. Elijah McClain was walking home from a convenience store when he was confronted by three officers in Colorado, in response to a 911 call reporting a suspicious person walking in the ski pass. McClain resisted contact and a struggle ensued, according to a news release from the police. McLean was wrestled to the ground, according to a letter from the Adams County District Attorney, and the officer proceeded to place him in a corticoid hold, restricting blood flow to his brain. When the paramedics arrived, they administered McLean ketamine, a powerful anesthetic. He suffered a heart attack en route to the hospital and was declared dead. And this young man was 23. So that's Elijah McClain. Next, we're going to go to Amir Locke. I want to read these young men's exact story because the truth needs to be told, people. And this is horrible when you truly begin to look in the injustice and the suffering going on between young blacks in the community. You have to ask yourself, at least the people of Staten Island, how has Eric Garner become so important when so many other innocent minorities whose lives were taken from them, who had dreams and aspirations of being so much more, have died? Amir Locke was 22 years old, and this happened on February 2nd of 2002, people, 2 years ago, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Minneapolis police were executing a no-knock search warrant linked to a homicide investigation in neighboring St. Paul when a SWAT officer shot and killed Locke, who appeared to be asleep on the couch when officers came in. Locke wasn't named in the warrant. Locke's cousin was there. City officials didn't release a lot of information in the days after an officer shot Locke. Other than 14 seconds of video they said showed Locke with a gun. He had a gun, people, but he was asleep. The video shows officers using a key to open the apartment doors as officers shout, "Police search warrant." Officers yell, "Hands, hands, hands," and get on the effing ground as they approach Locke, who was sleeping on the couch and wrapped in blankets. One officer kicks the back of the couch, waking up Locke. He begins to sit up with his gun in hand as 3 shots in the home came to be heard by officers. Now, people, that's Amir Locke. Let's go further, though, because it's not over. Next, we have Dante Wright. And I'm naming all these people for a reason, because we'll get to that reason at the end. Dante Wright was a 20-year-old African-American man, and this happened on April 11th of 2021, 3 years ago. What happened? The young father was pulled over by police officers for an expired tag and an illegal air freshener. During the stop, officers learned he had an outstanding warrant and attempted to arrest him, but Wright pulled away and tried to drive off. As video of the incident shows, Officer Kim Porter yelled "Taser" repeatedly before she shot Locke with her handgun. She then said, "Holy shit, I just shot him." She added, "I grabbed the wrong fucking gun and I shot him." So people, this dumb chick, instead of grabbing her gun, grabbed her taser and shot this innocent kid. People, let's keep going. That was Dante Wright. We're going to go to Patrick Loyal, 26. People, so far, all of these people I'm named have been under 30 years old. But let's keep going because Staten Island has an Eric Garner Day. When I've just named 3 people under the age of 30 that have passed away since Eric Garner that Staten Island probably doesn't even know about, because the truth is his mother manipulates her connections to the police to only honor him. And the truth is a man who had no accomplishments in his life, whose true purpose in life was to stand on Victory and Bay amongst dope fiends and drug addicts and sell illegal cigarettes and property he did not own with a license he did not possess, because you do need to be licensed to sell tobacco in the state of New York. Let's keep going, though, people, because this is honestly disgusting. I was so disgusted watching this Eric Garner Day, I'll be honest with you, that I just drove off. I couldn't even get out of my car. So we're going to go to Patrick Locke, who was 26, and this is April 4th of 2002. Again, people, 2 years ago. Grand Rapids, Michigan. The incident began just after 8 a.m. On April 4th, when police say they pulled over a vehicle for improper registration, the driver, Lawyer, got out of the vehicle and at some point ran. Grand Rapids police said body camera footage showed the officer chasing and tackling Rock, resulting in a minutes-long struggle. The officer attempted to tase Lawyer at least twice, according to the police chief, but failed to make contact as Lawyer put his hands on the taser. At that point, the officer's body camera was accidentally deactivated, but cell phone video shows the fatal shot to the head, which can also be heard in the video from the home of the surveillance counter. So they shot him in the head, people. Let's keep going, though. Next, this gentleman was 49, so we have someone there who was a little older. This is Robert Green. Let's go to Mr. Green. I have little summaries of these because I want to tell their stories and be accurate in their story. I don't want to leave out any details. We have Robert Green, 49. This happened May 10th of 2019. This was 5 years ago. Louisiana State Police engaged in a vehicle pursuit of Ronald Green after attempting to pull him over for an unspecific traffic violation. Unspecific. Reported LSP, I guess that's Louisiana State Police, reported that the pursuit ended with Green crashing his car into a tree. 2 years later, body camera footage of the incident was released that showed state troopers repeatedly tasing, beating, and violently dragging Green. The family filed a lawsuit accusing the agency of trying to cover up how Green died. We know what police do. And Green's family said they were initially told that he died in a car crash, but forensic examiners later eliminated the car crash as being the reason he died. So people, they beat this man to death and then threw him in his car and crashed him into a tree. People, this is sick. Let's keep going though. Let's keep going. That's Robert Green. Next, we have George Floyd. Everyone knows who George Floyd is. George Floyd, I believe, was a very sad case. He was kind of similar to Eric Garner. I would say that. He was very similar to the Eric Garner situation, except that I believe George Floyd might have been a better man than Eric Garner. And I can say that just looking into his life, things he's done, the way he tried to take care of his daughter. True, he had a drug addict, but at the heart of things, George Floyd was a good man. And I can say that he did have a drug problem, but George Floyd had things in his past that he would define him as a good man, hands down. George Floyd happened May 25th of 2020, 4 years ago. Minneapolis, Minnesota. Minneapolis police responded to a report of a forgery in process outside of a Cup food store where Floyd was accused of passing a counterfeit 20. Officers approached Floyd's car, yanked him from the vehicle, handcuffed him, and began to struggle with him in front of a squad car. Video camera footage showed one officer, in an effort to restrain Floyd, knelt on his neck for over 9 minutes. Floyd pleaded with the officer to release him, saying, "I can't breathe," repeatedly, quite similar to Eric Garner, and repeatedly calling out for his mother. After several minutes, he was unresponsive. George Floyd was very sad, honestly. Next, we have Breonna Taylor. Super sad Breonna Taylor. Let's go to Breonna Taylor. Breonna Taylor was 26 years old, and this happened May 13, 2020, in Louisville, Kentucky. A Jefferson County Circuit judge issued 5 search warrants in pursuit of Taylor's ex-boyfriend convicted of drug-related crimes. One of those warrants was for Taylor's apartment, and Louisiana Metro Police executed it early in the morning on March 13th. Police denounced themselves and battered down the front door while Taylor and her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, were in bed. Thinking they were intruders, Walker fired one shot at the officers with a gun he illegally owned. Officers then responded with heavy fire, fatally killing Taylor during the raid. Now, her situation is sad, but her boyfriend had a gun, which unfortunately put her life in danger. But officers are designed to de-escalate. They shouldn't have gotten to a firefight over one shot, but this is the overzealous nature of corrupt law enforcement nowadays. And we get to Eric Garner, who many people know what happened with Eric Garner. Again, Eric Garner was in front of a store illegally selling cigarettes. He was approached by officers who knew him there to be selling cigarettes illegally, as he was a constant fixture in this area, which was highly trafficked by heroin addicts and drug sellers. Eric Garner stood his ground. He asked the officers to leave him alone. Once they approached him and asked him, to comply, he refused to comply. He was thereby restrained by this officer Pantaleo. Dickhead, I knew Pantaleo from my former days of getting in trouble. He was never a just and fair cop. He was always a racist cop. He was always a racist bastard, Pantaleo. We just got to be honest. Unfortunately, Eric Garner was killed, smothered to death as he was suffocated, and his air pipe was cut off while he continually told them that he could not breathe. The death of Eric Garner was quite tragic, I'll be honest, and especially knowing him, it was something that definitely affected me at the time it happened. And Eric Garner was 43 years old. Now, all of the African-American males and females I've mentioned are deceased. They were horribly, horribly, horribly violated by law enforcement, and that ultimately took their lives. But should minorities have to die in order for the community and I would say society at large to recognize that their civil rights have been violated? I don't think you should have to die to get the recognition from the community or the civil rights movement or the just people or advocates of civil rights. to get recognition when you're done wrong by the police. The next person I'm going to mention is Victor Abraham. Victor Abraham is quite alive. Victor Abraham is now 25, but he was, I believe, a 20-year-old kid when officers out of the 120 precinct attempted to set this guy up on a string of robberies he never committed. He was arrested once, bailed out. He literally bailed out, and within 48 hours, they came after him for two more robberies. What they did was take a picture of him and try to show them to different robbery subjects to unjustly accuse him of robberies he never did. Finally, when they did arrest him, they prosecuted him and subjected him to harsh conditions on Rikers Island, which affected his mental health. This guy stayed locked up for a year and literally beat a trial after a jury took 2 hours to acquit him of all charges. And let's be honest, it probably didn't take that jury 2 hours to acquit him. They probably acquitted him, went to lunch, and then came back. And this is how he got off. Now, I personally know this guy, and this guy has not gotten help from one city council member on Staten Island. Assemblyman Charles Fall doesn't speak to him. This alleged pastor, Victor Allen Brown, the voice of the community who speaks up for the rights of minorities, he doesn't even acknowledge Victor Abraham. But the funny part is I had an ex-girlfriend who stood in his church and lied on my late mother, a true hero, a true advocate, a true champion of social justice, and accused this woman of lying about the fact that she had an order of protection against me, her son. I watched this young woman lie and tell hundreds, if not thousands of people I was physically abusive to her, that I raped her, people, that I robbed her, and I was completely villainified by this church and by a community of alleged black people who stand up for the rights of innocent minorities. Yet once I proved that this woman was a liar, everybody went silent, people. It was like, shh, nothing. Nobody wants to acknowledge the fact that this young woman lied on an innocent black man. No one wants to step up for Victor Abraham, who was unjustly arrested and prosecuted by Staten Island's biggest, most hateful racist, who happens to be the district attorney, Michael McMahon. Michael McMahon he's not a good man. He's not a just man. He's not an honest man. He is not a man who truly cares anything for minorities. Michael McMahon cares for himself and his position. He does not want to help the communities on Staten Island. He plays the political game. He plays the propaganda game, people, where he wants us to believe that he's truly here for the minority children in the community. People, that's a joke. This man's only mission is to lock up as many innocent black men as he can within the community of Staten Island. People, a black man on Staten Island, much like a black man in every part of the country, is not innocent until proven guilty, even though that is the motto of the law enforcement system, that you are innocent until you are proven guilty. It doesn't work like that for minority males. No, we are guilty until we fight our behinds and our life force off to prove our innocence. And this man is the symbol of that injustice. Now, some might think that I speak of this man and I don't know him personally. How could I say these things and just not know Michael McMahon? I've had no interaction with him. People, again, that's a lie, because I do personally know Michael McMahon. And how do I know Michael McMahon? Through my beautiful late mother, who truly was a hero and an advocate. See, in this picture, you see my late mother, Reverend Maggie Howard. You see the Staten Island District Attorney, Michael McMahon. He looks younger here, far better than he looked in the decrepit picture before this. You see former Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton. And you see the ex-wife of Pastor Victor Allen Brown, Sandra Brown, who is my personal connection, unfortunately, to this uncouth and unjust pastor. People, in the slideshow I have just shown today, people, I've shown it for a reason. And the reason I've shown this slideshow, highlighting members of my community, members of several minority communities who are unjustly taken by corrupt law enforcement, is to make a point. Black people, we should not have to die to receive the protection and the advocacy from our community leaders that the unfortunate people who lost their life was. Forgetting myself, we have a local young man who is dealing with a situation in Victor Abraham. And Victor Abraham is not the only one. Staten Island is notorious for setting up innocent minorities and maliciously prosecuting them for things they did not do. I, in my need to tell the truth, have fought vehemently to make people aware of this, people, because it needs to be told. The story of people like Victor Abraham, people like myself, who were innocent, who were maliciously prosecuted by the very man who I showed you, which is the Staten Island District Attorney's Office, needs to highlight a point of the injustice that continues to go on. Now, true, many innocent minority children on Staten Island are subjected to gun violence. And we're subjected to gun violence by other members of our community who happen to be minorities. But maybe collectively, if these same community leaders and these same community advocates took the time to focus on the true issue instead of trying to acquire votes or political clout for themselves, most communities in America, not just Staten Island, would be a better place. See, the unfortunate part about the times of people like Malcolm X and Dr. King was that I would say, civil rights movement itself kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It kind of, it gave black people an arena or a platform to be united. Now our rights are somewhat more liberated. I won't say that we're truly. I won't say that the civil rights movement was successful overall, but we do have incredibly more rights nowadays than we had back then. And I believe this false sense of equality that we have as black people are the reason that we do not stick together. Every community has a Victor Brown. Every community has a pastor who is corrupt, a pastor who sells out people within his community, a pastor who is completely false and manipulates his congregation to favor himself. Every community has a district attorney, a Michael McMahon, who does not care about minorities, whose sole purpose is to lock up the minorities because that is where his statistical grounds to make the government think he's doing his job comes from. We have to look at how many innocent minorities are falsely arrested for acts of domestic violence yearly. Domestic violence is a serious offense, people, and the rights of women should be respected. But domestic violence isn't what it used to be 20 or 30 years ago. Men are much more conscious about putting their hands on women, and I'm not saying that they don't do it, but I'm saying it happens a lot less than we think. Women have become wise enough now to realize the incredible power they yield with using domestic violence law against men, excuse me. So what many women do nowadays is they lie. Got an ex-boyfriend who breaks up with them, who breaks their heart, who cheats on them with another woman, who decides he just doesn't want to be around because maybe he wakes up one day and realizes this woman is not for him. So what a lot of women will do is they'll abuse domestic violence law by going to the same corrupt and racist law enforcement officials they know who are biased against black men, and they lie through their teeth, and they cry, and they do all the things they need to do to get this biased and racist system on their side. And this system prosecutes and arrests innocent black men. I'm almost positive if we did some serious reform in domestic violence to truly look at what's going on, probably 30 or 40% of the arrests would decline, because the majority of domestic violence complaints are false. They are lies created by vindictive and malicious partners who care nothing about the truth and who only care about vengeance. People, we need to acknowledge who the true heroes and advocates and martyrs of our situation are. And it's not people who lie to the police. It's not corrupt pastors who may use their church pulpit to put liars before a community to further, I would say, booster their credibility once liars are discovered to be exactly what they are. It's not district attorneys who play the social media game of taking pictures with Muslims and blacks to make you think they're not racist. When the truth of the matter is that they work diligently to set up as many innocent minorities that they can. All of Victor Abraham's paperwork was signed by Michael McMahon. Michael McMahon's office knew that they were setting up Victor Abraham, but they figured he was a poor black kid and they could get away with it. Michael McMahon's office knew they were setting me up for a false arrest for my ex-girlfriend, Francina Evans. I mean, people, I had a federally protected order of protection against this woman. A racist cop told me my order of protection didn't matter. He just wanted to arrest me because I was a black man. People, how deep is that? I'm the victim of a domestic violence of order of protection. And just because this cop didn't like black men, he arrested me for crimes he knew I didn't do. People, how is this justice? How can we say we live in a community that is truly unbiased to black men when there are situations still going on like this with living black men? But instead of anyone, even Gwendolyn Carr, an advocate for the rights of black men because her son was unjustly killed, speaks nothing about it, people. Gwendolyn Carr, an advocate who is respected within her community, could actually sit back having had two innocent black young men falsely arrested for stealing a car she paid $2,000 for. See, people, that they paid $2,000 for, excuse me. The truth of the matter is, people, is that the reason that social justice is the way it is, minority rights are the way it is, and the black community is the way it is, people, is because of people like Gwen Carr, sellouts, liars, false advocates who tend to believe that their mission or their purpose or their stance is more important than someone else. I am a black man who personally knew Eric Garner, and I'm going to say something that a lot of people don't like. Eric Garner should have never had a street named after him. Now, what happened to him wasn't unfortunate. His family got money for it. More power to him. But Eric Garner's life is not one that substantiates having a street named after him or a day on Staten Island. He doesn't deserve it. He doesn't deserve to truly be made a martyr, people, when he's not a martyr. He stood for nothing. He stood for nothing. His death was truly about nothing but him trying to impress people that was around him. The truth is, Staten Island, instead of there being an Eric Garner Day, there should be a National Minority Victims Day where all the people who have become martyrs because of corruption in police will be honored, not just Eric Garner. Eric Garner was not a singular situation. Eric Garner is not the only black man that has been unjustly wronged by the police and law enforcement. I just named 8 people who died after Eric Garner, who probably 95% of the people on Staten Island know nothing about. But you all know the name of Eric Garner. Do you know why? Because his mother uses his death as a platform to aggrandize herself. This is a woman who has never been about anything in her life. She's never been a community activist. People, Gwendolyn Carr was a loser up until the point of Eric Garner's death, where people like this pastor, people like Al Sharpton, like councilman, and like the district attorney Michael McMahon, they use her as a symbol to make themselves look like they're helping the black community. When the truth is, they're only trying to manipulate us by using her unfortunate tragedy to make us think that they care about us. And she's a sellout because she knows these people doesn't care. People, again, she used the district attorney to have myself and another innocent black man arrested for stealing a car we paid her $2,000 for. Yet this woman will sit back and pretend to be an advocate for social justice. People, I'm gonna tell you the truth. Gwendolyn Carr is a fraud. And until we shed light on people like Gwendolyn Carr, false advocates, false pastors like Victor Brown, corrupt district attorneys who use people like Gwendolyn Carr, who only wants to manipulate us through her position to make us think she cares about the rights of minority male, we will have a problem. We need to speak up about people like this. We need to speak up about the advocates and the city council people who do nothing for the rights of minorities, because this is the lie that destroys community. Lies told by people like Gwendolyn Carr, lies told by false black pastors like Victor Brown, lies told by propagandists and racist district attorneys like Michael McMahon. The greatest lies that destroy communities are the lies we minorities tell ourselves. Minorities, we should not turn villains into heroes, and we damn sure shouldn't turn heroes into villains. And on behalf of Operation Rock today, that is my message. Minorities, we need to stop turning villains into heroes and heroes into villains and look for those people who truly advocate for the truth. Because the truth is the only thing that'll set us free, not sitting back lying for people who are already liars. That's my message today, people. Like, share, and follow.